Once again, South Florida is about to become the center of the news universe. The history-making 37-count indictment against a former president of the United States lands at the federal courthouse in Miami in about 48 hours. The indictment, unsealed Friday, outlines charges and evidence that Donald Trump unlawfully kept classified documents and then tried to cover it up and cover up the wrongdoing that potentially endangered the security of the United States and those in service to protect and defend. Today, we will look at it all from a South Florida lens. That's what we do here, with a group deep in the weeds with South Florida crime and politics. Some introductions first. Marc Caputo is national political reporter for a new publication called The Messenger, nationwide publication. Dick Gregorie retired from the U.S. Attorney's Office a few years ago after several decades prosecuting some of the highest profile defendants to come through Miami federal court. Barbara Llanes is a former federal prosecutor as well, both in public corruption in New Jersey and then with DOJ in Mexico, and is now in private practice. It is so great to have everyone here at the table for our first real roundtable since COVID. So welcome. So I want to first get to like a real South Florida look at what is going on, because all the nationals and all the cables talk about this over the weekend. Dick, let's start with you. Why Miami? Why is this in Miami?
Well, this case primarily happened at Mar-a-Lago, which is in Palm Beach County. And I think you have to understand the local rules here a little bit. Cases that happen where the Palm Beach courthouse is the counties there would bring a case to the Palm Beach courthouse.
Southern District.
Southern District of Florida. It has to be in the Southern District of Florida, but they divide the cases up, Key West, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, and Fort Pierce. This is this is not a Fort Pierce case, it's a Palm Beach case, but one of the judges that's assigned to that northern division is Judge Cannon, and it appears the case has been assigned there. But the defendant is being brought to Miami for his first appearance.
On Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
All about that.
Yes.
Mark, you were saying before the show, you've seen evidence it will be in Fort Pierce eventually?
Well, we've gotten some indication, to Dick's point about the rules. Though it's a Palm Beach County case, in the Southern District's rules, a judge that's adjacent to the division where it is can take the case if the judges in that division are too busy. And in this case, that's Judge Cannon, and she's based in Fort Pierce. We also have word from inside the Southern District that they are preparing for the trial to be in Fort Pierce. And the Trump campaign and the Trump legal team, to the degree that they're segregable, both believe that it's going to be tried in Fort Pierce. But then some people think Miami. No one seemed to really know.
And so those of us in news are saying, no, darn, not Fort Pierce. So is this, Barbara, is this, Miami is a really interesting place, as we all know. And is this sort of politically or legally a plus or a minus for the former president, or both in some ways?
Well, I think, like you said, both in some ways. Of course, Miami is a very attractive venue just because it's a hot spot right now. But one of the things that's unique about Miami in terms of federal districts, it's that the cases tend to move quickly. Once a case is indicted, unlike in other districts where there's more of a tendency to have continuances, in Miami, which is sort of by some known as the rocket docket district, things tend to move more quickly. Of course, we all expect Trump's team to fight everything and appeal everything, and so that's probably going to prolong the process. But in the sense that it's going to move more quickly than in other districts, I think it's both a plus and a minus. So
as a let's just say wherever this is going to end up, aside from the initial first appearance on Tuesday, as a prosecutor, Dick, you're going to have a jury of peers. How would you sort of, what's the first thing you would do? How are you going to lay this out? What do they have to understand in a very politically charged atmosphere?
I don't think people give jurors enough credit. Having talked to jurors after trials have been over, jurors take very seriously their duty, especially in a case like this. They're going to get called in and told this is the former president of the United States. There's going to be no question about that. That's right there at the head of the indictment. So
No one's not going to know that.
yeah, so I think that any juror that's called to this case is going to take his or her duty very, very seriously. And this is really not a political corruption case. It's a national security case involving political figures. And it's very interesting to take a look at this. I know there's been a lot of complaint that the president says, oh, they're treating me unusually. I'm a special character. But that's not the case at all. If you look at this poor military guy that was arrested in Massachusetts, the U.S. military went out with armed soldiers and arrested this guy. He was thrown in jail and he hasn't seen the light of day since.
So
President Trump was sent a summons and asked, please come in next Tuesday to show whether you're going to be arraigned or not.
well, we kind of saw, you know, it was state court in New York, not federal court, but we saw this process play out in President Trump when he was indicted in New York State. The process was what the process was. The special arrangements were for security as such, right? I mean, you were there.
I wasn't in New York for that.
Oh, you weren't in New
I
York
was
for
not.
that?
No, I missed that one.
I was in New York. I thought you were there with
No,
us.
everyone seemed to be.
Everyone else was in New York.
You know, I'm as the political reporter here. When Dick says like some people don't give jurors enough credit, I'm among them who probably don't give jurors enough credit, so to speak.
Well, let me tell you, I was a juror, so I will tell you firsthand, there are some you can give complete credit to and some you can't.
And that's the thing, is that the prosecution ultimately needs to win 12 votes, like unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And generally your jury pool is going to reflect your county. And so you look at how people voted in Miami-Dade County. 46% of voters in Miami-Dade County voted for Trump in 2020. Mm-hmm. That's roughly 5 in 12 jurors that are possibly pro-Trump. Palm Beach County, it's 43%. It's roughly 5 in 12. And then Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, that's 6 in 12. That's half of a potential jury pool is a Trump voter.
So then the question becomes, okay, you're going to sit there and your jury is being chosen. Barbara, do you care who they voted for? Do you trust that a voter can walk in and say, this is my party, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, this is how I feel politically, but I'm in a legal court of law now and I have instructions to follow. Do you trust that that will happen?
Generally, yes. I'm with Richard on that, but look, at the end of the day, jurors are people. And even if they want to do the right thing, their feelings and their context, internal context, may affect the decision that they ultimately take. But the other thing to take into account is that there's a number of strikes that each side will have in a criminal case to eliminate jurors for basically any reason they want. They don't have to be for a specific cause. And the defense will have more strikes than the prosecution. That means the defense has a better chance of getting the jury they want than the prosecution does. And so this is obviously going to be another helpful thing for the defendants.
And there is no way, I'm assuming, even though the judge is going to say, presumably, you can't look at social media, don't read the newspaper. I mean, how does that work?
I don't know how that works. And what Trump is doing, if you would have seen his press conference yesterday, if you would have seen the show prior to this one, Republicans
and the emails and the
emails. They are already sending out the message that this is a witch hunt, this is not fair, et cetera. And essentially what they're building toward is jurors who are just going to reject this case, and some of them might go in that jury pool and lie. And one of Dick's former colleagues of the Southern District told me that the jury selection process here is going to look like a clown car with pitchforks, is how he described it.
Well, I'm going to have that graphic made right now. I want to delve into that a little more. We're up against a break, so stay tuned because I want to get more into the indictment and what a lot of people think is a witch hunt. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back with the roundtable. Former prosecutor Barbara Llanes, Marc Caputo, ace political reporter for The Messenger, Dick Gregorie, also retired big-time Miami former prosecutor with some of the really amazing cases over the years. But so in the last break, clown car with pitchforks, we ended on, I believe, is how, and we've since learned that your colleague and Miami Beach mayor and my friend Dan Gelber actually came up with that. So credit where credit is due. Jury selection, an interesting way to describe that for the former president's trial.
Well, I think this is a case which would call for a jury questionnaire. So if the clerk's office does this the way I would want to see it done, they will send a questionnaire which will be agreed upon by both sides. and you'll probably get a very large number of potential jurors who will receive it. Having done cases with questionnaires before, they'll have to be reviewed, and a number of jurors will be knocked out from their immediate answers.
With what's your first question?
Well, the question would be, are you able to sit fairly on this case, knowing nothing more than the fact that there's been an indictment? There are a number of people who are going to say, I'm so politically involved in this case that I couldn't rule fairly on it. The thing is, you rely on jurors to be truthful, to answer these things. They're told in the questionnaire that they're being asked these questions under oath. They're being asked to be truthful. This is the district where we tried Falcone and Magluta and had 3 jurors bought and paid for who pled guilty to taking bribes. So it's not that it's an impossible place to find people who will lie to you. On the other hand,
The cocaine cowboys days he's talking about.
So the Miami story, file that under Miami stories, and we can
Yes.
have like a 4-hour show on
we
the
would
rest
have
of
to
those.
take a week for that.
Do,
Yes.
do you think, I want to get into the actual indictment, but Barbara, do you think there are jurors, in my experience, twice being on a jury, some of the most fascinating experiences of my life, anyone who tries to get out of it is making a huge mistake, but they do. Do you think this is one of those cases where people are going to want to try to get into it?
There will be people who are fascinated by the case, and they're going to try to construct their answers so that they can be part of the jury pool. And there are people who are going to want to have nothing to do with this case.
Right.
I don't know if this is going to ultimately be an anonymous jury, but if you're a juror on this case and you think it's appropriate to convict or not convict, either way, you're going to have a situation that in your personal life, maybe in your professional life, you might be affected. So you may not want to be on the jury. So I think we're going to have both.
I think she points out a good point, which is that whoever wants to be on this jury should be looked at with suspicion. And whoever doesn't want to be in this jury should probably be impressed into service, you would think. This is just a very difficult case.
Up is down and down is up.
Remember, all the rules that we've ever known are out the window because it's Donald Trump. The only thing that's not unprecedented about Donald Trump is to say something's unprecedented.
So wouldn't it behoove attorneys to take that and turn it on its head and make this process so much process and so normal and so unexciting and so, let's get into the narrative of the indictment a little bit. It really unspools this evidence that the special counsel found. It's got tape recordings of Donald Trump saying things that the special counsel finds very incriminating. It has photographs of where boxes of classified documents were stored. It goes into the reasons why this is so egregious. Why not just be very matter of fact about it?
Well, I think that certainly was what the prosecutor intended when he drafted a speaking indictment. I'm a big fan of speaking indictments. I like to take the best evidence you have and put it right there in the indictment because there isn't going to be much argument about it. This case is spectacular in that fact. It's very rare that you see an indictment with pictures in it.
TV, we like pictures.
An indictment where it quotes the defendant in recorded conversations. I mean, this is not a usual indictment. Speaking indictments sometimes are a little more usual, but a speaking indictment in which the defendant himself is quoted in numerous parts of the indictment is unusual. But then this defendant is somebody who has a way to implicate himself in a lot of wrongdoing.
Okay, so that said, there are Republicans right now who are calling this a witch hunt. This morning on all the national talk shows, there were Republicans in Congress coming out and saying, what about Hillary? What about Hunter Biden? What about Mike Pence? So address the witch hunt accusation. How do you get around the very real perception for a lot of Republicans that this is not fair?
Well, I don't think you can really get around it, especially, as I'd mentioned before, just that pressure and that messaging is just going to be absorbed by osmosis into people. But as they could probably tell you better than I can, those arguments can't stand in court. You can't argue selective prosecution. You would know better than I would.
As I told, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I think that the prosecution, in fact, there may be motions to that effect. I would anticipate that the prosecution will say the defense should be barred from arguing that this is selective prosecution. And that's something that's also probably going to be litigated.
Is that a defense? That's not a defense, is it?
Well, you can sort of
It's
try
Trump.
to infuse the air with that theory and that sense, so that, like I said, jurors are people, and so that they have a sense of injustice. And so it's a defense in a sense, even though it's not a technical defense.
As I told Mark this morning, we were talking about this as we came in.
Yeah, I understand you got a lift. You're an Uber driver now.
I didn't even charge a tip.
You know, this is unusual for me as a prosecutor. I wouldn't ride with the press normally, but in this instance, it was very helpful to get here. Yes.
Yeah, I've got friendships like that.
But as I was saying to him this morning, this is a case that is going to be very difficult, and one of the things we haven't discussed this far is the Classified Information Procedures Act. You'll note in this indictment there are 32 counts in which they go specifically to specific documents that were taken by Trump and hidden in Mar-a-Lago. These documents all contain classified information. They aren't laid out. They are sort of summarized in very short form in the indictment. There is going to have to be a discovery procedure that's going to lengthen this pretrial process, which is going to be in the Classified Information Procedures Act. The judge is going to have to look at it. They're going to have to decide what the jury can see, what the public gets to see, how these documents are going to be treated, and that's going to be a very complex process.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of rules.
It's going to be unusual because I don't believe the jurors are going to actually get to see the documents themselves.
Oh.
They're going to get to see a summary or some agreed upon description of what's in there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. All right, quick break again, and we will be right back in a couple of minutes with more. Back again for our final segment of Roundtable with Marc Caputo, political reporter for The Messenger, Barbara Llanes, Dick Gregorie, former prosecutors. Barbara, what is the possible motive here? I'm reading, we're studying, we're looking at evidence. We've covered Donald Trump, but why? Why would he have not only brought back all of those documents, hid them, showed them to at least a writer and a publisher and a former PAC representative? Why?
That is a question on everyone's mind, and that all of us would like to have answered. I would just say hubris. I think former President Trump just believed that he should have these. Whether that was legal or not legal didn't matter. That was what he was entitled to, that's what he should have. And he didn't care what the implications of that were legally. And there's reason for him not to care, because he's been able to overcome every other scenario where he's gotten in trouble legally. So if he wants the documents, he's going to keep them. And that's the only motive that I can see here.
You don't have to prove motive, do you?
No, I don't think this is a case that requires proof of motive. It will require proof of knowledge and intent, but he seems to admit to that rather regularly, so it'll be interesting to see where they're going from there.
I mean, it's remarkable because, what's really interesting about the case, to their point, is this didn't have to happen. Like the National Archives just said, hey, give us the records back. It took him a year. He returned these boxes. They opened the box. There's classified records in there. They're like, oh my God, what do we do? Like, these are librarians, okay? So they call the Justice Department. And the Justice Department says, okay, hey, Donald Trump, give us these documents back. And then this weird negotiation happens. And it basically, like symbolically, they basically said, there's a rake. Don't step on the rake. And Donald Trump's like, there's the rake. They're like, yeah, okay, I'll step on it. And then bang, he almost worked for this indictment.
So what do you think, politically, since you are the political reporter, what does this do now to the unfolding Republican primary lineup?
We don't know. What we saw with the Alvin Bragg indictment, if you actually look at the polling,
the New York
prosecutor.
Yeah.
The New York prosecutor. At that point, I mean, it's almost like a call and response situation. He gets indicted, and then his poll numbers just go up in the Republican primary, Trump. Now, what we don't know is, was that low-hanging fruit he was able to pick? Is there any more growth up there? Or at a certain point, are Republicans going to say, you know what? This is just too much chaos, it's too much stuff. Alvin Bragg, in the view of a lot of people, was a problematic prosecution that he's bringing.
Yeah.
There are far fewer people who see this as a problematic prosecution. And a lot more people trust the Justice Department than Donald Trump and some of his supporters want you to know.
Well, what about the judge? I mean, he's got, by all accounts, if there was such a thing as a favorable judge,
He appointed her.
He appointed her, and
Yep.
she's already opined in the records case in his favor.
Well, as we've already mentioned, CIPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act, one of the first things that's going to happen is she's going to have to review all of those documents, and the defense attorneys are going to have to be permitted to come in and see all of the documents. And I would be sure that they're going to make a motion not only for the ones that are mentioned in the indictment, but all the other documents that were pulled out of Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago. And so you're going to see a rather lengthy pretrial proceeding in which she's going to have to make rulings on exactly how those documents are disclosed to the jury and how the discovery proceeding is going to go forth. And they're all going to have to be cleared to do that. That's going to be a bit of a lengthy proceeding. CIPAs are an interesting act, and cases of national security that involve CIPA get a bit complex.
Barbara, I'm going to give you the last word here. The judge needs to perform like a judge.
She does, and this she does need to do that. And look, at the end of the day, we trust our judges, and we trust our system, and we trust our institutions. But we are all humans, and we make mistakes. The only thing that we have is that trust in our institutions, and I'm optimistic that this judge is going to see all of the perils in this very visible, high attention case, and that she will do what is right and what is fair and perform her duties.
48 hours from now, Miami Federal Court. You'll be there.
I will.
We'll be there.
So will you. You might have to hold my phone, by the way. I don't think I'm allowed to bring it in.
You didn't fill out the
No,
form?
I did. They didn't give me.
Anyway, I will say, being in federal court without electronics, it's really nice to be incommunicado for just a little while. I'm just going to throw that out there. Barbara Llanes, Marc Caputo, Dick Gregorie. This has been so great, our little dinner party without the wine, so maybe we rectify that at some point. But thank you so much for being part of our first roundtable since COVID.
Thank you for having us.